Here we have some 40 series Land Cruiser seat mounts. Some of them are pretty far gone here, such as this one. I'm going to attempt to restore these to their original form. Here's another one here. Pretty nasty. I have various pieces of scrap steel on my workbench that are the same gauge. So we're going to take these, and I think I'll start with this one here. So my plan is to, there's one spot weld here. Going to drill that out, take this entire piece off, and try and replicate that. And that's the plan. Okay, so keep in mind this is all a little experiment here, so follow at your own risk. Anyways, I took this piece off here, hammered it flat, and I was going to use it as a template, but I thought, well, there's not much left to it. So what I did is I took the one that's in reasonable shape, and I basically put it on this piece of paper and basically just rotated it and marked my lines. So I'm going to use this as a template. But what I thought I would do is start with this guy first. So what I did is chopped this monstrosity off here and thought, well, I'll build the bottom first, because this piece is going to have to go all the way around. And I cut that using my paper template. So now how do we make this piece? How do we make this little piece here? So I just cut another little piece of paper, traced it onto here, and I found something with a similar radius and just hammered the curve into it. Now, to get the proper spacing, what I'm doing is using this clamp here to clamp this guy in place. And then I've got this magnet here, and I'm going to put this guy underneath it for the height. And then I've got this piece, which I'm putting on the bottom. And this piece here is going to go right there. And I don't know if you can make it out, but I scribed a little line on this piece already. So I'm going to get that done, then I'll do the other side, and then once this is all cleaned up, then I'll work on forming this piece. Okay, so I got that piece cut, fits perfectly. Now I'm going to bevel the edges of each piece to get some good penetration there, and I'm going to weld that in place, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you can see the gauge I use is very close, so I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so I got the two pieces welded in. Everything's basically ground down. And then I bent this piece up. I was off a little bit the first time. Excuse me. So I had to rebend this. And now it slides on quite nicely. I will drill a hole here and a couple holes here for the plug welds, and then of course for the bolt holes I'll have to drill some holes here, but you can see the factory plug welds here and here, and then up here. So I'm going to replicate that on this one. Now I'm going to tackle this nasty looking creature. So I'll basically have to do the same thing as I did on the one behind it. This is a shorter version of the same thing essentially. It worked out pretty good, so I'll probably just use the same process. I was contemplating just bending new metal up and just making a whole thing from scratch. I do have a couple ideas here, but anyways, we're going to tackle that one now. So as usual, I get carried away, don't do any filming, end up making a bunch of progress, and then you guys don't get to see how it's done. But basically did the same thing on this one. I made two small pieces, welded them to the top piece, just less work to do that way. And then I made a new piece that goes on the bottom like this one here. I'm going to get this lined up, nip this off, weld it to the corner. Then this one will be done. Basically, you just need to drill a few holes. And yeah, and then the other one up here, I've got a bunch of holes drilled. Just need to weld it together. And then that'll be both of these done, and then we can tackle some other nonsense. So there we have it. These guys are all done. Holes are drilled. Pretty happy with how these turned out. Not too bad for my first crack at it. This one here, I didn't rebuild the whole thing. There was a few pits I just welded up. I could probably spend another 30 minutes to an hour filling those and filing them down, but don't know if I'm going to do that or not. So anyways, this was a little project for a client of mine. Now I'm going to tackle this monstrosity here. This will be the next guy. That one's just slightly rotten. So I think I might tackle that one, and then I'll tackle these legs here tomorrow. So I removed the makeshift support. Now I just have to figure out how long this thing's supposed to be. I'm not sure if it's there. This was bent up, so anyways, what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to try slicing this section off and then welding a piece on there. I think this is roughly 16 gauge or so. So yeah, I'm going to try that. And then once this piece is welded on, I'll probably make the bottom piece. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Okay, so I sliced the section off of this guy. I've got some steel here. It's the same thickness. I just don't know how long this is supposed to be, so this is on hold right now. I'm going to work on these guys. They're both rotten at the bottom. So I'm going to slice this off, and I have a little, at least I think it's a clever way of knowing exactly what the right length should be. So I'll show you that once I get set up here. But I'm going to slice those off, and I'm going to use some scrap steel I've got here, this stuff, to rebuild this section all the way around. I can't find any tube that'll match the exact dimension, so if I do use a different size tube, it's not going to look as original. So I'm just going to use what I got. So I cut this off, and look at that. Look at that scrap piece of steel there. It is basically a perfect fit. Couldn't ask for anything better. So just going to use this and get this welded in. To ensure the piece is welded in straight, I've got a piece of steel to align it to, and got the magnet on top, and I've got a bit of a gap there so I get good penetration. And yeah, let's get welding. So I got that tacked in place, and I actually welded from the inside since I can access it, and you can see the weld basically penetrated through. for the most part. So I'm going to finish it from the top here, and then I don't really want to mess around with cutting little slivers, so I'm just going to use this, and there'll be a bit of a gap to fill, but it's not too major. So yeah, that should work out pretty good. So I got these ends all welded up, new steel there. All I need to do now is cut this plate, drill a hole in it, and then weld a piece to this bracket and a piece to this bracket, so then they can be bolted to the floor. And I came up with this little jig in order to help me determine the exact length I need. So before I cut the legs off, I basically made this little jig up. So I knew, or I know, that that is the correct height because I just pivot it over and it slides on. So I've already cut it. I'm going to have to cut it down a little bit more to fit that plate in, but that's where it's at right now. Okay, so back to this support here. I need to add about 15/16 to the bottom. So I found this piece of 16 gauge, which is basically what the factory frame looks like. So what I'm going to do here is get my distance this way. I'm going to scribe a line, and then I'm going to bend the sheet metal, and then I'll just trim off the excess on the top. And then yeah, we'll see what happens with that, and then I might be able to bend in the excess material to get the sides done. Alright, so I've got this little piece of sheet metal bent up, and somebody provided me with a measurement, so I've got it all in place, and now I'm going to weld it up. And then what I'll probably do is cut this part off and then fold in the part at the back into the side here. So yeah, let's get welding. Once again, getting carried away here, not filming stuff. Drilled a couple of mounting holes on the bottom, tack welded this in place, and cut the bended part off of here. So now I'm just using this piece of wood as a little bending tool. I'm going to fold this up, cut this off to length, weld that up, weld up the corner, do the same thing on this side. So that's how I'm approaching it. So nothing complicated here, just used a piece of angle iron to get this thing in focus, get this tacked in place. Now for this corner, I use the same approach, except instead of using a piece of wood, just use a piece of scrap steel, and just going to cut it through here and then do a butt weld along there. And that's about as far as I'm going to go with that. I cleaned up the welds as much as was worth doing. Pretty happy with how it turned out overall. And at the same time, you can see this guy here, got the new foot welded on, replaced the rotten section here. So yeah, there you have it. Remember to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. Catch you in the next video.